Hey, this is Aaron, the metal theologian. Alright, so usually I'm a pretty big believer in the whole one take thing. Every so often I'll even forget something. I have to stick it in my own comments at the bottom. This time my webcam kind of dicked me over. I actually recorded this whole thing and found out that the goddamn thing was on mute the whole fucking time. So this is actually a second take, so I hope it doesn't sound like anemic in the delivery or anything like that. Anyway, so the topic for today is the Azra Ironworks Metal Storm sort of umbrella of labels. Don't know a whole lot about the background, except it was another label based in LA. And just right out of the gate, I don't have as much of this stuff. This isn't going to be like a comprehensive, here's the whole catalog from start to finish, like what I was doing with a Metal Blade, where the records are easier to find anyway. This is going to be more like, what I've managed to come across in my years of collecting. Now, part of why I'm doing them all together is because it's really kind of hard to separate them from each other. Azra is pretty clearly the earliest one. The earliest releases are all Azra. It also seems to be the one that was the least focused as far as the type of music that was being put out. And I've actually figured out after the fact that there are a couple things I used to have that I let go of over the years. Like I had the Carrie Doll picture disc, which was halfway decent glam shit, but not that great. I traded it for something else long ago. And there was another record by a band called No YZ, called Sheer Electronic Din, I think it was called. It was also a picture disc, which wasn't even metal at all. It was sort of like, it would be my punk section now, but it was sort of like, kind of sort of punk rock, but like it was kind of an experimental bent, and more like punk from sort of the do-it-yourself standpoint than even like anything particularly stylized. It was a really good record, actually. I probably should have kept that thing, but so it goes. Now, most of my stories here come from the fact that when I was living in LA, I actually had the opportunity to meet Dave Richards and hang out with him for a few hours at his house one afternoon. And it's kind of funny when I finally, and embarrassingly late, got my copy of the first Overkill full-length to see sort of the hate that they were throwing at him, because I don't know what he was like to deal with or anything like that, but from my experience, he was just a super nice guy, friendly, and generous. I mean, he was happy to show me around and show me all this memorabilia he had and shit, and he even gave me a few things, which I'll show later in the video. One thing I did sort of get from that, though, which was interesting and kind of explained things for me a little bit, was that all these different bands that he liked seemed to be kind of equal in his mind. And he just sort of seemed to like things on the same level. So, like, he'd have some amazing, like, piece of Slayer memorabilia or something like that, and you go, oh my god, Slayer, And then he would be just as excited about some Foreigner stand-up that he had, like, with a mobile attached to it or something like that. Which admittedly was kind of cool, but as far as like a magnitude of the band goes, was just incomprehensible to me that they'd be at the same level in his head, So, in a way that kind of explains, I think, a lot of the catalog, across sort of Azra and Ironworks and that, because, some of these things are just killers, and for sure most of the stuff that I'm going to show is going to be on the heavier end of the spectrum, but he also did some really just embarrassingly bad glam shit, I mean, there's like that Sin record, and, there's another I can picture the cover of that I can't remember the name of, but just some of it was just complete crap, and the only reason anyone buys it is because he was so into doing those weird, like, picture discs and shape discs and different runs of things and all kinds of shit like that. So anyway, without further ado, I think I'll go ahead and start with an early one that falls into that category, and that is this one. You can see the Azra label there. And yeah, this is basically a 45. This is by the band Lady, about whom I know pretty much nothing, except they're not the same Lady as the Dutch Lady who made that really great Lady Killer EP. That's a completely different band. This one is pretty much a total piece of shit. I listened to it the other night, and I was like, oh, I know why this has been put away for all these years, because it really just sucks. It's just sort of middle-of-the-road rock and roll. There's really nothing special about it at all, and it's kind of a turd, but it looks really cool. So the next of the earlier ones, which kind of surprisingly to me, it seems to be one of the easier ones to find. They probably just pressed a lot. But that would be the Centaurus record. Looks like a total private press. To all intents and purposes, probably is. This one has a couple instrumentals, some kind of slow parts, and it's funny because I remember not particularly liking this one, and I've had it for a long time. I played it maybe every 3 years or something like that, and I was kind of going, listen to maybe a side and put it away. But when I put it on the other night to refresh my memory, I really enjoyed what I heard of it. So it's not the greatest thing in the stack by any stretch, but maybe this is one of those records I just need to prove myself worthy of over time and realize how great it is. Or maybe it's just a decent record that's not a piece of shit but not great. It just hit me right. Who the hell knows, right? Next one in my stack here is an Ironworks piece. No, actually I lied. This is an Azra too. And this is the Axemaster record, Blessing in the Skies. I'm very proud to be able to show this off. This is actually my most recent acquisition in the stack. I got it from a dealer here in South Carolina. This is also, hard rockin', straight ahead metal all the way through, good stuff. With a singer who really has kind of a punky, kind of nasally sound to him, which is that much more surprising because this band seems to have a vaguely Christian bent. Songs like, at the very beginning, The Prophecy, Golgotha, and Blood of the Temple just seem to really be kind of, carrying some Christian themes. But then it goes into rock forever, so it's not a heavy-handed record. It's kind of ambiguous, really. I wonder if they were trying to pull a Trouble or something like that, but is what it is, I guess. Next one's another Azra here, and that is the Vixen record. Unfortunately, not as good as you'd hope it would be. Made in Hawaii. I actually mentioned these because they had a song on one of the Metal Massacre comps. But this is their one-sided EP. Just kind of worth showing off for that. It does have. This band's probably best known for having had Marty Friedman in the band, and he is on this record. You see, there's nothing on that side. I don't know if you can see that, but it doesn't have any grooves or anything. Whereas this side with the label is actually playable. So yeah, it's totally a Azra type of thing to do. The singer on this one is a woman, Kim LaChance, and she just sounds kind of anemic all the way through, really, and just kind of, it's like, I would sort of hope for like the kind of screams you hear from like, Troll Feroz, or maybe something gravelly, woman with a gravelly voice, like on Taste of Iron, but this doesn't really cut it by any of those criteria. It's just sort of whatever. It's just not a very exciting record to me. In contrast to this, which is also easier to find, this is Metal Without Mercy by Ruthless. There was also a license of this that came out in Europe. I believe it was a full-length, and it might have been on Axe Killer, although I'm not sure about that. This is a 5-song EP. Has some pretty hilarious band shots on the back if you can make them out. And there's your Ironworks logo right there. And this is a definitely sort of on the chunky kind of heavy metal end of the spectrum, and it has another singer who's kind of doesn't have so much a gravelly voice as much as kind of just a raspy kind of that sort of voice in contrast to the Bruce Dickinson type of singer. So it's almost like the Azra sound, it seems like, because a lot of these bands seem to have singers like that, for better or for worse. Here's another one that's not really a favorite of mine, even though it's a cool piece. It's Live to Die by Intruder. If I'm not mistaken, these guys did make another record after this one. This is pretty much a thrash metal record, and I don't know, this is one that maybe I also just need to sort of hear a few more times, and maybe I'll eventually prove myself worthy of it and realize its greatness. But as far as what I'm hearing in it when I listen to it, and sort of the half dozen times I've listened to it since I got it a few years ago, it gets an A for effort, but the songs just aren't quite there. The performance is okay, the production is adequate, but it just doesn't really hold my attention the way I would hope a good, any record, but specifically a thrash record would. So let's move on to a classic here. That one, by the way, I've been trying to get these as I go through and I keep zoning. But this is also an Ironworks. This is another Azra. Doesn't really need much introduction. Being the first Jag Panzer EP. Here, I'll pull it out so I can show it off a little better. Yeah, and this band seems to be pretty well known. They've finally gotten their due after the fact. Now, the story that I heard about this band, as far as where the name came from, and again, this is me relying on someone else. It's my recollection of someone else's recollection. But supposedly the band was sitting around one time, and I don't know, maybe Dave was there, maybe he wasn't, but they're sitting around, they didn't know what to name their band, and they saw some lowrider car parked across the street, and it had a vanity plate that said Jag Panzer, and they were like, oh fuck, that's going to be our band name. So they took it, and the rest, as they say, is history. So, yeah, as I said, this is an Azra, it's an EP. There are also picture disc versions of it and all kinds of other shit like that, but I don't really collect that stuff, in case you haven't noticed. On Ironworks, though, it's accompanying piece. Great record, they're full length. There's another band I kind of proved myself worthy of, actually, I don't mind saying here. When I first got this record, back when you could still get it relatively cheap, I put it on, went, oh, you know, that's cool, sort of filed it away, and listened to it a couple more times, did the once a year thing. And then one year I pulled it out and went, oh shit, that's a fucking great record, oh my god, you know, now I get it, you know, it sort of clicked. So I've got to second all the good things that everyone else has said about this thing, and anything bad that anyone said about it, they can pretty much get fucked, because this is good shit, man. Alright, here's another classic that probably enough words have been spoken about. It's the first Overkill EP. This one now is on Metal Storm. There's their band picture, and this is the 4-song EP. It includes Rotten to the Core and their signature song, Overkill. And true to form, it's spelled as one word there, but it's 2 words on the cover. Never quite figured that out, but hey, artistic license, I suppose. Great record, though. The next one is yet another classic. As you can see, the order here is a little bit arbitrary, but right, sort of all the good shits at the end, right? So the first, Dark Angel, We Have Arrived. We got a couple good stories about this one. First of all, you know, this is kind of the one that collectors are after, you know, the Metal Storm one. I mean, this is definitely the more classic cover, but I'm sure some of you have seen this one as well, which is the Axe Killer edition of it. And I had seen different things about which one had come out first over time, and what was the what the story with that one was. I'd heard that this one came first, but then also this one. So I actually asked him about that. Apparently, the story is this record was done. They'd recorded it, they'd mastered it. It was all ready to go. I think they might even have the plates. They had everything ready to go. It's just time to press it up, but they didn't have any money to do it. So just sort of out of nowhere, they got a Axe Killer gets in touch with them and asks them about doing a license of the record for a French release. So they licensed it to Axe Killer, and that licensing deal financed this. So it's a good story. One other thing about this record, which most of you probably have, but I don't know if you've noticed this before. But, sorry, I'm not very good at this. There we go. Alright, you see that specific demon floating right there? Yeah, you probably ought to, because it's lifted directly off another record cover that you already have. In fact, once you see it, it's so obvious that I'm not even going to say what it's from right here, because you really ought to know by now. Yeah, I thought that was kind of cool. A little bit corny almost, but kind of awesome. Alright, in the spirit of saving the best for last, my personal favorite, Stormtrooper, Armies of the Night. It's a fucking badass record. Look at how corny font that they used. I wonder what they were thinking when they picked that for this thing. It's like a comic book font or something, but it's a great record. Rocks really hard all the way through. Another kind of raspy singer. Steamroller, last song on side one, is one of my favorite songs ever. No shit. This thing is just an absolute killer on Ironworks. So as I mentioned, I got some stuff while I was there. Now, when I was visiting Dave Richards, he said that it was weird to him that the Europeans were starting to freak out over the vinyl on this stuff. But he still had these tapes that no one seemed to particularly give a shit about. So he just gave me some. I just hung it up with this, which is actually still sealed from the 80s. And this. Shit, that reflection's bad. I hope you can see it. That's the Axe Master album on tape. This one's really cheesy looking. Look at that spine. And it kind of opens backwards too. Like if you see that, normally you'd hold it like this and open it. But the other one I have here actually is one I don't have on vinyl. And that is this one. Ah, there we go. This is High and Mighty by Commander. Yeah, and this record goes for a lot of money. It's a good tape. I don't think it's the greatest thing on the label, and given that this is probably the most expensive thing, for the price of this, you could probably get, maybe not 2 Stormtroopers, but you could probably get the Stormtrooper and the Overkill and the Dark Angel. You'd have much better shit than this one, so I don't really recommend trying too hard to find this one and cough up $400 for it or whatever. It's kind of nuts. So anyway, that's my Azra Ironworks Metal Storm collection here. I'm going to show one more though, because for some reason, I don't know why, but based on the record on Discogs, Rock House Records is listed as another Azra sublabel. Now, based on looking at the only Rock House record in my collection, I don't see any evidence. There's no thanks to D.T. Richards. There's no produced by. There's no Azra, distributed by Azra or the address or anything like that. But I'm going to show it anyway because it's just a fucking great record and it gives me an excuse to. So, right here is one of my very best records. Graven Image. People in Hell Want Ice Water. One thing it does have in common with the Azra shit is that it's one-sided. It just has 2 songs, No Rest and Warn the Children. And they're both on the same side. The other side is just blank. The other difference between this one, there's a picture disc with these 2 songs and one other one, which is a lot easier to find. But Rob Griffin does the singing on that one. They're different takes of the songs. And the guy on this one, Mike Aldridge, is just unfucking believable. Rob Griffin's a hell of a guitar player, don't get me wrong. And, his fingerprints are all over this thing, and my hat's off to him. But Mike Aldridge, about whom I otherwise know nothing, sings his fucking ass off on this thing. And it's just a killer piece, man. It's one of the greatest fucking records of all time. So with that, I will close. Thanks as always for indulging me. Till next time. Hope you enjoyed it.